Find other great podcasts like this one at podmoth.network.
Hey, what's up, you guys? I'm Catherine.
And I'm Haley.
And we are Saturdays Are for the Ghouls,
A podcast on the Podmoth Network.
We cover all things spooky, like horror movies, true crime, the supernatural, and spooky stories.
In the most chaotic way possible.
So join your favorite ghoul friends every Saturday wherever you listen to podcasts.
And become a spooky babe.
So spooky babes, we'll see you
in your nightmares.
Hey, Twisted listeners, I'm Cindy.
And I'm Diva.
And this is Twisted Listers, a podcast about murder
and lists.
We're brought to you by the Podmoth Podcasting Network. They're amazing. Check them out. All the other shows on the network. And once again, as you all may have noticed, we now have ads. We have officially become monetized, which is pretty fucking cool. So if you want to support us, listen to the stupid ads. I know, but just do it. And if you are like, fuck that, I hate ads so much, you can also support us by joining us on Patreon. And if you do the $5 level, you get everything early and ad-free. It's patreon.com/twistedlisters. We'll also send you some stickers, which I'm in the process of approving right now. They put our print a little crooked, so we're trying to fix that before we get them printed. But yeah, so if you hate ads, you can come to Patreon and skip them. And if you love us and want to support us via those ads because you don't want to go on Patreon, then just listen to them and, buy a Toyota or whatever the fuck.
Whatever they're advertising, yeah. And HelloFresh or whatever. I'm just saying the cliche, Simply Safe, the cliche like all those podcast ads.
Yeah, all the good ones.
Yeah, and also if you're a sticker enthusiast who's already a patron or whatever, it's a really good, different sticker with a beautiful art.
Yeah,
for us, so you might just want to buy it, so we'll also make that possible. So,
and yeah, it's got a clear background, which is pretty dope. So anyway, those will be coming soon. We skipped this the last few times, but let's just do it. So if you'd like to join us on Patreon, it's patreon.com/twistedlisters. If you'd like to join us on TikTok, it's just @twistedlisters. If you'd like to check us out on Instagram, where we are most active, you can do that at
Twisted Listers PCast.
If you'd like to send us an email with case suggestions, which we legit love and we keep getting them, and it's so great, you can do that at.
We're doing it this week as well. List suggestions as well.
This is a suggestion. Yep.
twistedlisterspcast@gmail.com.
And if you'd like to
pod@gmail.com.
Wait. Say it again. twistedlisterspod@gmail.com. I do that too. I've entered it wrong.
Oh my God. It's been a long day. twistedlisterspod@gmail.com.
And if you'd like to check out our website, which I am updating currently, you can do that at
twistedlisterspod.com. There we go.
There we fucking go. Yeah. Okay. Also, really quick, this is Chicago Murders Part 2, but we want to do a quick corrections corner.
Oh, yeah.
Speaking of case suggestions. So lovely Stacy Joe had asked us to do the John Morgan case, and you covered that. That was in upstate New York. It was in our listener requests.
Friends tortured their friend to death, in case you forgot.
Yeah. Yes. And Stacy actually turned us on to the Murder Among Friends show that she was interviewed for, and I think actually on. And we use that, I think, for a good portion of our research because there's not a lot of information. There's not a ton of articles about the case as far as I know. That's right? It's pretty sparse.
Yeah, I mean, I found some, and I took everything the show said with a grain of salt, but yeah, it was nice to hear from someone who knows the case that, to confirm that a lot of that was bullshit.
Yeah. So what she said was, I don't know why the show said, she was super gracious about this, by the way, and Stacey, we appreciate you and we love you and you're so fucking rad. Even the way that she corrected it, because she knows that we used that show and she knows what that show got wrong. So she just let us know. She said first thing, the escape rooms didn't actually even exist in 1998. So she doesn't know why somebody said that. And I know you said that too. You were like, it kind of seems weird that he's into those. just because he wasn't. She also said that
thing. I think it was a device to make the puzzle piece make sense when it was just like a random thing. But I think it was like a thing to make the puzzle piece spooky.
Right. And then she also said that the puzzle piece literally had nothing to do with anything either. And that they just kind of, again, they like put that in for effect, essentially.
Yeah.
She also said that Amanda was never, in fact, pregnant. She just said she was. And then she said she had a miscarriage. So she was like, she was like, quote unquote, miscarriage. Like she was trying to find some way to rope him into staying with her. And when he was like, dude, that's not my baby if you're pregnant. Then suddenly she was like, yes, it is, but I had a miscarriage. So she kind of dropped it, I think, when she realized it wasn't working. Also, they got it wrong. They said they abandoned the car, but they did not abandon the car. She said there were a ton of other little things that just like they fucked up that we didn't really cover, which is good. But anyway, that's kind of the stuff that she pointed out. She said that John's little sister did listen to the podcast, so I really hope that she thought we did a good job, and I hope she listens to us correcting that stuff here. And Murder Among Friends, like, get your shit together.
There's definitely tiers of investigation discovery shows. There's like your premium cut, like Evil Lives Here, See No Evil, like stuff that's really, really well done. And then there's like a lower couple rungs further down, and that's definitely like the bottom of the barrel stuff. So it's a shame that, you know, a show that's not that great is the one that covered his case, because clearly there are people that would have given information, but they were like, let's make garbage instead. So
yeah, that's annoying. So hopefully with these corrections, everybody gets a better idea of the story. I think that's all I have to say. Do you have anything else to say?
No.
Okay. That's it then, guys. We'll do the cases now. So this is Chicago Murders Part 2. I go first, right? Is that right?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right, so I'm going to do the Gage Park Massacre. It's weird how similar to my last story this one is. There's so many similarities. I'm sure you guys will notice. Pretty weird, though. So this takes place in Gage Park, Chicago. It's the Gage Park area of Chicago, Illinois in 2016. It's a pretty nice neighborhood, apparently. It's pretty, like, safe, not a lot of violence or anything weird. And this story centers around the Martinez family. So we have mother Maria, sons Leonardo and Alexis, who are 13 and 10, and go by Leo and Alexi. Her parents, Noe Sr. and Rosara, who went by Rose, and her brother, Noe Jr. So they all live together in this big house. Maria had been married for quite a number of years, but had divorced fairly recently. It wasn't a great breakup. We'll talk more about it later. But her husband had a nephew named Diego Uribe, who came around a lot. He'd known her sons their entire lives and had spent time with the family even after the divorce. So one of the reasons I think that they got divorced may have had to do with her husband's involvement with drug cartels, specifically the Juarez drug cartel. Yeah, no matter how hard I looked, I could not find anything super specific about the husband, like in terms of his connections with the cartel. But I do know that he was definitely, you know, doing some big time shit with them. So I think that the breakup was pretty bad. You know, there was some bad blood between them. Obviously, the boys were living with Maria. I don't know where the husband was at this time. But his nephew, who was like 10 when Leo was born, or even younger, 8 or 9, you know, he had known Maria most of his life, like since childhood. So he continued to come around the family. He'd come have, you know, meals with them. He and his girlfriend would come over. So they had like a pretty good, you know, family kind of relationship even after the divorce. So now we're at February 3rd, 2016. And one of Noe Jr.'s coworkers noticed that he did not show up for work. Now, Noe was a window washer and was a really reliable employee. He was always at work on time, and they thought it was really weird that he didn't show up. They called the house. He didn't answer. I'm sure he had a cell phone, which they called. He didn't answer there either. The next day, Noe doesn't show up for work again. They try the house again, and then they get worried, so they call the police for a wellness check. The cops go to the Martinez family home, and I don't know, I think they had to break in to get in. They knocked. I don't know what they saw when they knocked, but when they got inside, they found a horrible scene. When they got inside, they saw first they saw Noe Sr. on the floor in front of the front door. They found Noe Jr. at the top of the stairs, Rose at the bottom of the stairs, and the two young boys, one dead in the living room, one dead in the basement. They then went into one of the rooms in the upstairs area and found Maria, who was also dead. Now they are trying to figure out what happened. Obviously, they are looking into the ex-husband. They're looking at, the drug kind of connection. They end up talking to an informant who had been deported to Mexico. He was like a high-level informant, and he tells them that the husband was actually in trouble with the Juarez cartel because he'd stolen 250 kilos of cocaine and disappeared. Yeah.
Holy shit.
That's
a
like
lot.
$1 million or more.
Yeah.
So they're kind of tracking down this lead. He told them, there are these 3 guys that came with me and when they're going to go to the house and kill them. But it wasn't like a slam dunk. It was more just like, this is what was supposed to happen. They were in the area at this time. But weirdly, it didn't seem like the informant had really concrete information. So the cops are working this lead, but they're also processing the crime scene. Now, at the crime scene, there was a lot of blood spatter. So they were processing all of it to make sure that it only belonged to the victims. And they'd also taken scrapings from under Maria's fingernails. Now, this, like I said, happened in February, and it took until May for the DNA to come back. And when they got that DNA back, they realized that it did not tie the cartel to the murders. Or it didn't necessarily, because it did tie 22-year-old Diego Uribe to the murders. Yeah. Diego, the nephew, the step-nephew. So Diego and his 19-year-old girlfriend, Japheth, had a small child. They were struggling financially and needed money. They weren't sure what to do. They needed a car, they needed food, and he decided, I guess, to go rob the family. So the police go and they arrest the 2 of them and they take them into separate rooms and both confess. Wow. They're like, we've got DNA evidence, we can track cell phones, we've got his blood. Also, it wasn't just the fingernail scrapings, there was blood on the wall that belonged to Diego. So they're like,
so leaving a lot behind.
Yeah. They also start looking into other things to try to tie him. Like I said, cell phone evidence, there's some other stuff that comes up. But essentially both of them fucking confess. And they both separately tell what happened and their stories match. So what they both separately said is that, Japheth actually spoke more. She said, we came over in the evening, we had some food with the family, which is pretty fucked up.
Yeah.
And then Diego and Maria went upstairs to talk, and I guess they'd kind of been arguing prior to going upstairs. They go upstairs, the next thing you know, the family hears gunshots from the upstairs room. Noe runs upstairs to see what happened, and from here, this is more from Diego's point of view. He said that he pulled a gun on Maria when they got upstairs and demanded money. Maria was like, "You've got to be fucking kidding me," and tried to wrestle the gun out of his hands. He said he got the gun away from her and shot her 4 times in the head, and he also said that he closed his eyes when he shot her. He then said that Noe Jr. came running up the stairs to find out what happened, and as he was met at the top of the stairs by Diego, Diego began beating him with the butt of the gun, and beat him so brutally that he either died from the beating or from the strangulation that took place after he was unconscious. I've heard differing reports. But Diego fucking beat and strangled him to death.
Either way, it's brutal, for sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Then Rosara came to see what was happening, and she actually picked up a picture frame and threw it at Diego, which is such a sad thing to think about. This woman has no defenses. She's an old woman, in her 50s or 60s, older, obviously not super old, but I think she's in her 60s, and she's trying to defend herself against this person who's murdering her family, and she throws a picture frame at him. In return, he threw her down the stairs. She ended up unconscious on the floor. He then went into the kitchen and grabbed a bunch of kitchen knives and proceeded to stab her something like 30 times, I believe.
Oh my God. It's so drawn out and like gruesome.
Yes. I do believe he also stabbed Noe Jr. 13 to 17 times, but I think he was already dead at that point. Now, the really sad part, if you remember, is that the two boys were home. I didn't say they were home, but they live there. So they're home.
Yeah.
And he takes Alexis, who's 10, downstairs. First, he makes both of the boys gather up valuables. He's like, he's got a gun on them. He's like, load up valuables. Give me your Xbox, give me the jewelry, give me any cash in the house. And then he says to Alexis, he's like, Alexi, go downstairs. Let's go to the basement. We're going to pack up some of your stuff and we're going to leave. I'm going to take you guys with me. And the kids are fucking terrified, right?
Of course,
Yeah, Alexi does as he's told. And Diego, says everything is fine. But Japheth and Leo heard a scream coming from downstairs. Diego then comes back up without Alexi, and Leo is visibly shaking. And remember, Leo's 13 years old, but Japheth said that he was like visibly trembling and asked, like, what happened to my brother? And Diego, being the piece of shit that he is like, everything's fine. He's downstairs. Like, he just got scared. That's why he screamed. Something like that, right? Then waits until Leo isn't looking. He's like looking out the window and he stabs him in the stomach. He then stabs him a bunch more times while Leo screamed, please don't kill me. I just want to live.
Oh my God. It's a little baby. That's so sad.
I know. Absolutely fucking horrifying.
God. And just like, not that being shot or something is any fucking way better, but to go in such a way that he had like so much time to be so scared.
And so in pain and like, it's horrifying. Now, the reason he was looking out the window is because Noe Sr. had actually left during Diego's visit to the house. He went to pick up tamales and hot chocolate for the family.
Oh my gosh. That's like my ideal meal. It's so cozy and wholesome.
I'm like, was it champurrado? And people are just calling it hot chocolate because they don't fucking know. That's what I want to know. Anyway, when he comes back in the front door, he's immediately ambushed and stabbed to death. When police found him, they found the tamales and the hot chocolate on the ground next to him. Diego and Japheth then took all of the valuables that they got. It was about $500 in cash, an Xbox, and some jewelry. And they pawned it. They pawned the Xbox and the jewelry, and they ended up with about $700 in total.
I was gonna say, it's probably not even that much, for God's sake. Like,
no. So they
not that any amount is worth it, but it's like makes it extra stupid. Yeah,
they killed 6 people who were essentially his family,
including
for
children,
including 2 children.
Yeah.
So they're both arrested and charged, and then they change their tune. They recant their confessions. More Diego, really. Japheth ended up actually taking a deal and agreeing to testify against Diego, but Diego's changing his tune. He's saying, it wasn't me. He ends up getting the trial delayed for like 6 years using these like tactics with his defense team. The defense team pulled out information about the cartel. They found out that the police had been kind of taking that line of like investigation. Diego spins this fucking ridiculously stupid tale. He's like, I was there with Japheth. The cartel came like that guy said they were going to. They killed everyone in the house, but they didn't kill me or her. They told us like we had to take the fall or they'd kill our son. They'd kill our family. All this fucking bullshit. And it's like, yeah, dude, that's what the cartel's going to do, because the cartel definitely wants to leave a witness behind to take the fall. It's the fucking Juarez cartel. Like, they're not going to do that. Like, it's so fucking stupid.
And I'm sorry, like, I don't mean to make them sound cool, because they're not. They're evil. But if they did some shit, like, it would not be sloppy. It would be done very coldly.
Yeah, it wouldn't be the type of thing that potentially could come back to them. Or if it did, they wouldn't, like, if they want you to know they did it, you'll know, and there still won't be anything you can do about it, because they're
absolutely
fucking gnarly.
Not. Yeah.
The prosecution had DNA, they had cell phone records, they had, I believe, pawn shop witnesses. They also had her testimony. And the defense just had this bullshit. So it sounds ridiculous, and it is. And the jury, after fucking 6 years getting to the trial, this past November of 2022, he was finally sentenced. He was given life without parole. And his girlfriend, who's now 25, Japheth, was given 25 years for her involvement. And she was only charged with,
Yeah.
I believe, like burglary because
Yeah, that was the best deal she could have gotten for sure.
yeah, and because she and he both initially admitted like she had nothing to do with the actual murders. Like she was in the house,
Right.
but she didn't so
She
much
was
as
just
like
there.
yeah, she didn't touch anybody. Like she didn't even like
Yeah.
hold the boys. She did nothing.
So she wasn't charged with murder, just with like burglary.
No, just with like
Yeah.
the burglary. And his defense,
Yeah.
I think, also tried to throw her under the bus, saying there's no way he could have killed all 6 people. And it's like, well, he killed the
You
first
could.
3 in succession, one alone in a room, and then the next 2 as
Yeah.
they came up to investigate. The last adult that he killed was not at the house at the time, and the other 2 are kids. So it's really not unreasonable to think
It's
that
not
he
that
could do
hard.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the last things I want to say about this that really pissed me off is that the family had a dog, and the dog was not killed. But what happened was the neighbor took the dog in while they were like clearing the crime scene and figuring out what to do. And then when the police were like, well, where, or whoever it was, where do you want to put the dog? She was like, oh, we should give it to their nephew Diego. He'll take care of the dog. So their family dog ended up living with the 2 of them, like with their family, for like a couple of months after he killed the entire family.
Oh my God, because they trusted him and because they thought he was like a trustworthy guy.
Yeah, the next door neighbor was like, oh, Diego, he's always here. Like he has a great relationship with the family.
Oh my God.
Yeah. The last thing is that he said he killed Maria because he was mad about the way she treated his uncle. But obviously that's just bullshit. He was trying to find money.
No.
Like he's a turd.
Yeah, it's just a burglary and it's not that like complicated. And also, why did you kill the children then, asshole?
Yeah. Like yeah, the whole thing's bullshit. He's a piece of
shit.
shit.
And a motive can only go so far there.
Yeah. Yeah. So he'll never ever get out of prison. She will when she's in her mid 40s. I don't know what happened to their child. That's kind of the saddest part to me. But there you go. That's the story.
Yeah, their poor kid. Jesus.
I know.
What a decision when you have kids yourself.
And when you knew them from basically the day they were born, to be able to do something like it's so fucking cold-blooded. It's so gnarly.
Brutal.
Yeah. Yep.
Oof. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, everyone ready to get depressed?
Everyone ready to get depressed?
Oh, a lot more and a lot
great.
really sad and really mad.
Oh, really?
Cindy's gonna get spitting mad. I'm gonna like raise your heart rate right now.
Okay.
We're gonna talk about the Chicago Strangler.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Or also known as the South Side Strangler. Yeah, this is a really angering case.
Yes.
Case is. So we're in Chicago. Obviously, the time span is roughly 1999 to now.
Okay.
Including the present moment. Basically, there are 51 unsolved murder cases of women between the ages of 18 and 58 in Chicago between 1999 and 2018. All of them were strangled to death. There were actually 75 that were total killed in a similar manner, but 25 of those cases were closed with 13 men total arrested, and that's what brings the number down to 51. So the 51 is an outstanding number.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's so many.
So these cases have been drawn by investigators and various activists, and I'll talk about that in detail later. But they've been drawn together and kind of grouped later on as having a lot of similarities. About 75% of them are Black women.
Right.
There's also some white women and Latinas. About half were sex workers. All of their murders were except horrific, and they follow, for the most part, a similar MO. Many of them were raped. Many of them were bound and gagged and or had plastic bags over their heads. They were almost always, this is a big common denominator, I think. They were almost always dumped in public places, like parking lots or alleyways, and a lot of them were lit on fire.
Jesus Christ.
Yes.
That's fucking,
They're almost always nude or partially nude. 7 of them were found in dumpsters.
Wow. So just like an intentional fuck you after the fact. So this is just heinous and horrible from the very beginning all the way through to the end.
Yeah, really, really gross, horrific crimes.
Yeah.
And many of them are found in very close geographic proximity to one another. If you look at the map, it's basically like a series of 3 or 4 tight clusters on the map of Chicago, especially on the west and south sides. And of course, the south side is, as you talked about in your first bit with Jennifer Hudson's family, is kind of I don't want to say a bad neighborhood. It was created as one on purpose, right? And
it was intentionally made to be a bad neighborhood, and then people that white society deemed unfavorable were forced to be there.
Yeah, its problems are on purpose. So people differ on whether or not these cases are the work of a single serial killer, and it's been a very tough and still very much ongoing journey to get cops to give a shit about not just whether or not there's a serial killer there, but to get them to give a shit about these cases, period, in any way.
Right.
At all. So despite the gruesomeness of like the murders I just described, people also remark on how little press any of them got at all, besides like a brief like blip in the Chicago news. And because of who the women are, it's because they're Black women, and not even because they're sex workers, although that's can be part of it sometimes. It's not even just that, because a lot of them aren't. So it's really about the fact that these are poor women and or Black women. In a lot of cases, I'll talk about this more, there was literally no investigation. Families and friends reported that they were never once asked a single fucking question. So they're just not doing anything.
They don't care because I mean, it's the system working as it's intended to. That's what's happening.
Yeah. So I'm going to pepper in a few kind of cases as I go. I obviously cannot go through all 51, but I'm just going to pepper in like a couple of them as I go along, just to kind of give you a sense of the timeline, the stretch of it, and the types of crimes. So in 1999, the first kind of victim that's canonically on the Chicago Strangler list is Angela Ford. She vanished after leaving home to pick up her children's report cards.
Oof.
Yeah, she was a doting mother to a young son and daughter.
That's fucked up.
Yeah. She was found, she had been sexually assaulted, beaten, and strangled. And she was unconscious, but not dead. And she would stay in a coma for the next year and a half before she died.
Wow, dude.
Yeah.
That's fucking, I didn't know that. That's really, like, that's just fucking horrible for the family, you know?
Yeah. And what's interesting too in a lot of these cases, and like, of course, if you've listened to our podcast, you know that we don't like have anything against sex workers or sex work. However, it's interesting how even when they're not, the families get irritated when they're all just called that across the board. And it's like, it's clear how the press is just homogenizing them as a way to dismiss them.
Right.
Yeah, because it's easier for them to not care if they label them that.
Right.
In 2002, 44-year-old Gwendolyn Williams was found behind a Dollar Tree. She was half nude, and there was DNA. Her attacker's skin was found in her nails.
Ooh, good on her.
Yeah, so she fought back. And there's a great profile online you can read about Gwen. She was super religious. She was really close with her little sisters, whom she mentored. And she loved dancing. She loved going to church.
So she was like a whole ass person. She was a whole actual human being.
Yeah, I tried to pepper in details here when I could, just to remind you that they're people, right?
Yeah.
They're literally people. So
it's really sad how often people forget.
It's crazy that I have to say that, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So at some point in the late 90s to early 2000s, there was a task force formed to look at the cases, and at least some may or may not have been solved, ? But despite the murders continuing, I think that might have been when they got the first 21. Remember how I said there was like 75 or something? Oh no, I think they got like a batch of them solved, right?
Right.
And then they basically like threw in the towel. They were like, oh, we did it. Despite the fact that despite the fact that the killings were just continuing, they literally were like, okay, we did it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And they disbanded the task force.
Pat yourselves on the back, guys. You figured it out. Like, ugh. Embarrassing.
In 2007, within a 48-hour time span, 2 women were murdered.
Jesus Christ.
Teresa Bunn was 8 months pregnant.
Oh.
She was found in a dumpster, and she had been strangled and then set on fire.
Jesus Christ. Please tell me she was dead when she was set on fire, at least. I mean,
yeah, it sounds like it, but yeah, that's really fucking horrible.
it's a very small difference, but it's important.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
knowing what I know about people who are set on fire, it's
Right,
much
we just
better
did
if
that.
she,
Yeah.
yeah.
The following day, Hazel Lewis was found in a burning trash can in the same park where Teresa was found.
Jesus, also burning.
Yeah. Also, could these be related?
Could they? Maybe.
Weird, right?
Yeah.
May 2013, just jumping years forward just to show you the span of things. 20-year-old Amy Martinez was found strangled, burning in a dumpster. 2014, a man who lived near where the body of victim Velma Howard was found, having been strangled with an electrical cord. He said to press later on that the police, quote, just picked up the body and left. They did not ask him or any neighbors anything. And
they're not even trying.
They did zero investigation.
Yeah, they're like actively not trying. Like they just don't care. They're basically just like, well, take it to the morgue.
Yes.
Nothing to be done.
Yeah, they just cleared her from the street like it was just, that was the task.
Like she was trash.
Yeah.
She was trash.
Yeah. So killings with the particular MO associated with the Strangler stopped from 2014 to 2017. And some think that maybe the killer was in prison at this time.
That's a very good thought. Yeah.
Because there's kind of a gap. But then in 2018, it really picks up again. Between May and September 2018, 4 more victims were found. Laura Harbin was found strangled and left behind in an abandoned building, for example. That's some of the victims. Again, just a drop in the bucket. But here's the reason people started to think about this big group of 51 cases together is the work of an organization called the Murder Accountability Project, or MAP, M-A-P. Which is founded by this guy, Thomas Hargrove, after he studied the Green River killer, Gary Ridgway, and realized that those murders because they took so long to be recognized as the work of one killer, that he could find other kind of clusters of connected killings that people are not seeing as a pattern yet, and find those missed groupings, right? So it's a great idea. The MAP organization also looks at clearance rates of how often police solve murders and homicides, which is across different areas. So it's a very worthwhile organization. Check out their website.
That's great. Yeah.
So he's both holding cops accountable and also looking at what is connected that they're not seeing. So
that's rad.
Yeah, it's very cool. Hargrove met with authorities and he became convinced 100% that this is the work of at least one, if not a couple, serial killers here.
But he doesn't he thinks if there's more than one, they're not necessarily working together. They just have similar MOs, or
I mean, I've heard it presented as one. I've also heard it presented as one plus, one or two,
Right.
But it's not just 51 separate people.
No, of course not. And
yeah.
Honestly, with some of the serial killers that we know about, with the high numbers of victims that they have, I don't think it's unreasonable to think it's only one. And I wonder what the argument is for it being more than one. If it's just the sheer body count, then I think that alone is not convincing.
Yeah, it's unclear.
Yeah,
there are some divergences in the MOs. It depends how strictly you want to define an MO. For instance, there are a handful of these cases where women are dismembered, So if you think that's too far from the strangling and dumping ones that I just kind of described, then maybe that's someone separate, So it depends how tightly you want to wrap around one type of MO, I think.
Right. Okay. But the bulk is probably one person.
Yeah, that's what Hargrove thinks.
Okay.
Police do at first an official review, big sarcastic quotes there, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. They dismiss him, and I think, okay, well, I'm going to hold on to my little thing, but I think this comes out later in another time where they're pressured to do a review that I'll talk about, but it's unclear if this comes out right away. But they say that the 21 different cases of the 51 have DNA. And those don't have IDs, but they are all different.
Oh.
That's what they say.
Okay.
So police say that for sure 21 are separate.
That seems like a lot.
There's a lot of questions about that though, and I'll return to it.
Also, this is not this is not crime of passion territory. So for there to be 21 people who only kill one person in that manner, that doesn't make sense.
Well, it's again so to what okay, so there's a lot of questions that come up, and I'll have more later as well for that statement, because it's like, where was the DNA collected? Could we, like, how old was it? You know, there could be DNA, for example, that was like from consensual sex the day before, you know, or like, where was it? What kind? How do you know it's the attackers? Like,
right.
There's a lot of missing questions.
Yeah, and it doesn't sound like these cops are doing like a bang up job of like being meticulous or careful or giving a shit at all.
I'm shocked they would even test them, because it's like against one another. Seriously. Because again, and also let's not ever forget that cops can literally say whatever they want.
Including that there's all this DNA that doesn't actually exist. They could be lying about that. I mean, there's no reason.
They can literally just lie, type it on a typewriter and be like, bip, bop, boop, and just like go, good day, boys, let's go home. You know, like they literally can do that.
Which is terrifying.
So who knows? That also still leaves 30 victims, right?
Right.
And like I said, to what extent the authorities have investigated at all is highly doubted. And the families, of course, feel like they've just been entirely brushed off, because they have been.
Yeah.
Riley Ford, Angela Ford's father, said, quote, every time we talk to a detective, they know less about the case or cared less about the case. I don't know.
Yeah, that's so fucked. That's so fucked up.
So April 2019, after more pressure continues to mount, led by MAP and as well as many vocal members of the victims' families, a task force was apparently launched by the FBI in conjunction with the Chicago police to supposedly give a shit about the connection between these unsolved murders.
Right.
And spoiler alert, I'm going to tell you in 1 second, I have no fucking idea what came with this task force. Like,
right, of course.
There was a lot of press in April 2019 about the Chicago Strangler and about this task force, but then not a fucking single peep.
They probably all got really happy, like really relieved, like, you know,
of the good press. Yeah.
Well, no, when fucking COVID came, because then they're like, cool, excuse not to do shit.
It kind of felt like they also got a lot of press from just like it's a classic thing to be like, I'm announcing, I'm going to think about it. And everyone's like, yay.
Yeah. Cops are doing stuff. And it's like, no, dude.
But I don't know. Maybe it's still in progress though. I don't know. I didn't find any further information about like the words FBI task force and Chicago Strangler. Not a peep.
I mean, 4 years later, I feel like we would have heard something if anything was going on. Yeah.
May 7th, 2019, Nicole Ridge was found in an abandoned building, having been strangled. So again, they just keep on going.
Yeah.
They've never stopped. January 2020, police announced that they've solved the murder of one of the 51.
Oh, shit.
The murder of Diamond Turner, and they basically arrested an ex-boyfriend who they said killed her, which, okay, congrats, you did 1/50th of your job.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's not to diminish that for Diamond, but still.
No, of course not. But like,
I think they also make a big deal of that announcement to try to make it a strike against the serial killer theory.
Right. It's self-serving.
It's
just
only
like
one case,
else.
you know?
Yeah.
That's
ridiculous. So
again, I have no clue what became of that task force, but there were some sources I found that were from fall 2020, where the police coming out and kind of dismissing the whole thing, saying, well, we got 21 different DNA samples from 21. And so there's no serial killer. And I'm like, okay, but like,
yeah, no, that doesn't. Yeah, again, we've already talked about why that doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, so I'm not sure if that's when the task force dissolved or not. I don't know, because again, there's like no fucking press.
Right.
Hargroves, however, also points out that the fact that there's no DNA to collect in like 30 cases could, first of all, on my side here, it could also mean police not taking samples, right? Because they're just taking the bodies, throwing them in the morgue, and they're not fully taking all the samples they should be taking. But he also said it could be a sign of a serial killer being a serial killer, right? Like covering his tracks and like wearing gloves or like, you know, shit like that, or like taking serial killer type precautions.
Right, which is exactly serial killer type precautions, because that's what they do so they can continue killing.
Yeah. So spring and fall 2020, journalism students at Roosevelt University conducted a super thorough investigative project on the murders. And how they're all connected, kind of echoing Hargrove's, you know, theory here. So all the work that's been done in this case that's good has been done by just people.
Of course, by not cops.
Right. And you can go to the website, which is called unforgotten51.com. And they do have several profiles, including of Gwen Williams, which is where I got information about her. Because again, even in the little press blips, none of these women are ever humanized. They're never talked about as people not even like, oh, she has like a son and a daughter. Not even the tiniest fact, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I really appreciated what they did, the Roosevelt students, because they kind of like tried to paint a fuller picture of these people's lives.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so you can check that out. Also check out the MAP website. They have some pretty good coverage as well. Like, that's it. The police don't investigate this. They've never investigated it, to my knowledge, really. And the killer has continued murdering. As of reports in spring 2019, the count of women killed with this MO was up to 55. So it's not even the 51, it's the 55 as of 2019. So it's probably gone up. And I don't know to what extent Hargroves and these activists who've been active in the past are like tracking it now. You know what I mean? So who fucking knows? It could be 68 right now.
Yeah, it could be way more.
Yeah, exactly. In 2021, the community held their 4th annual March. We Walk for Her March is what it's called, to raise awareness about the victims and honor their memories. So again, there's lots of awareness about this among true crime people, among these organizations, and among the community. Everyone cares except for cops.
Except for the people who actually have the resources to do something about it. And it's just like, and the problem is that they're gatekeepers too. They have whatever evidence they have, they're certainly not sharing because it's weird how they're like actively, it's not just like they don't care. It's like they do not want it solved. It's not like they don't want to solve it. They don't want it solved because at this point, it's now a matter of like their egos and what they said is real. They don't want to be seen as wrong. So they'd rather allow people to continue to die than to say, oh, maybe it is a serial killer and we should do something about it. And that is like the cop brain mentality that makes me just want to fucking light everything on fire. Like it makes me insane.
And I saw some other blips of press too, where there's like, oh, well, the police didn't want to like cause like panic or fear by saying there was a serial killer. And I'm like, but if there is, like,
that's spreading awareness. That's not panic. It's awareness. Like, hey, there's a serial killer on the loose killing people in this area, like probably at night. Like, I would want to know that. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
you'd want to know. Yeah. It's like when we did national parks or like, and you were staying at that park and I was like, oh, funny thing how the parks knew there was an active sniper but told no one.
It's like, what the
if you're in danger and there's someone like that in your area, you want to fucking know.
You want to fucking know. And not knowing doesn't, like, okay, well, I'm not hysterical, but I'm also like possibly dead. Like, I'd rather be hysterical and alive.
Yeah.
The whole thing is so fucking infuriating.
So here's like a couple more little angering things to just cherry on the cake here. In June 2022, Illinois Senator Maddie Hunter put forward a law that passed that created a task force. And reading this, it kind of made me feel gaslit and insane because I was like, what happened to the first task force?
Like where are all these fucking task force?
No one told me what happened to the 2019 task force. And here's Maddie like, what if we started a task force? And I'm like, what?
What if you just find the one that you already started?
First one. Anyway, so this made me feel crazy. I like read it 12 times and I was like, oh God, okay. So this Hunter put forward a task force that's not just on the 51 alone, but it's actually about, quote, missing and murdered Chicago women more broadly.
Okay.
And it will initiate a $25 million plan to collect data on violence against women and girls in Chicago and research measures to reduce violence. So I have a couple issues. I mean, this sounds great. Don't get me wrong. It's better than nothing, certainly. But
100%.
I feel stressed about it and depressed and skeptical because reading it was very much like, we're going to spend $1 billion years getting data and researching what we could do and what we could tell the cops to do. And I'm like, so what you're telling me is that at the end of this $25 million, the cops could still say no?
Yeah, or like you're not looking at anything specific. Yeah. There is a specific issue that needs to be looked at. Why would you be looking at this in broad strokes? Yeah. You have like, it's like a real
There's a
fucking
serial
problem.
killer. There was like a BTK motherfucker out on the streets. And you're like, let's spend 5 years getting data.
Yeah, like what?
2 years, sorry. The first report isn't due until the end of 2024.
Jesus Christ.
So it's like, I'm so glad that we're going to spend almost 3 years thinking about what we could ask cops to maybe do.
If we can prove to them that they should.
A literal serial killer out in the world, but okay. Like again, this should all happen, but it should not be the only thing that's happening.
No, you should be looking at it's like, I don't know. I don't know what to compare it to, but it's like there's a very specific problem, like an acute issue.
Yes.
And we're just what? I don't understand. I
What
don't
if we
understand.
did a study? Yeah.
Yeah. A study. Like,
Yeah.
can you imagine? Also, can you imagine if like this was happening in like Huntington Beach, somewhere like
Oh my
affluent
God,
and white
yeah.
in Orange County or something?
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
it
Yeah.
wouldn't happen. It wouldn't happen.
This quantity of unsolved murders of like wealthy white,
it would
people.
never happen.
Exactly.
It never happens.
No, it would be like a crisis. It would be like CNN
There wouldn't
top
be
headline
lost task forces like that just
task
disappeared.
forces that never
Disappear
did
into the
anything.
ether. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah, it's just like it's a classic thing to do of like a certain kind of person who like wants to be performative but not act change to be like, let's do a study, like especially with diversity and stuff. It's like, let's see how X and Y and Z field is not that diverse, and they do a study and then they're like, cool, we did the study.
We can now. It's like, yeah, it's such a fucking like white liberal position to just be like
something about it though.
It's like, well, knowing's half the battle. And it's like, yeah, what about the other half? What about the half
the battle part?
Yeah, the battle, the action, like the change.
Do a battle, yeah.
Do a battle.
Oh God, it's so fucking frustrating.
No,
yeah, so
but it is. It's
again,
so bad.
and again, this is like I said, this should still be happening. I just wish it wasn't the only grain of hope. Like,
agreed. This should be a completely separate thing.
Yeah, for sure. So. And again, its goal is not to solve the 51 thing. It's a bigger goal, which is still honorable, but it's still frustrating to me that the 51 are kind of forgotten. And the activists, by the way, who were involved in raising awareness about the 51 and unsolved murders said they haven't been involved. And they've kind of raised some red flags about like, how come this whole initiative is happening and no one's talked to us?
That's a good point. It's a good question. Valid question.
Yeah. So also I wanted to note that this case really reminds me of Juarez, the missing women of Juarez, which I also want to do maybe for like a Patreon or something, because the women of Juarez the word for both cases that applies is femicide, which is when there was like a wide epidemic of women being murdered.
Right.
And that's what a femicide is.
Right.
And Juarez is the same way with the cops, where they are aggressively like, no, we will never investigate this. Don't even try to tell us to investigate it. And so there's these terrifying swaths of these cities where you can be a woman of a certain class or neighborhood and get murdered and no one will care.
Right.
Except, activists
crazy.
and nonprofits and things like that.
Yeah.
Of course. But yeah. So lastly, I know you'll appreciate this conclusion. I just wanted to conclude by saying that when people, I've heard this many times, seen it many times in comment sections, I know you have to, respond to people saying defund the police or abolish the police. And they say, but who will solve murders? Who will solve crimes? I want to say they don't.
Yeah, they don't.
They're really bad at it. They're aggressively bad at it. Another type of person, like an investigator, Paul Holes, another type of job type person could still do that. But the police are actually really fucking bad at it.
Yeah. They suck.
And if you look up clearance rates, go to MAP and look up clearance rates for different places, which means what the percentage of places are that actually, the percentage of homicides that get solved, and they're fucking low, dude. Like across the board. Yeah. The Chicago PD as of 2017 has a 17.5% clearance rate.
Wow.
So if you're killed and murdered in Chicago, that's the likelihood.
You're fucked, essentially.
Yeah.
Wow, dude.
Yeah.
That's fucked up.
That's
so low.
So yeah, it's like, ooh, and there's ones, and like I've heard other ones are like 8%, 6%.
That's fucking wild.
Oh yeah. I think, I forget where, but there's been some other podcasts that covered like kind of rural, like southern areas, and they were like, oh, the clearance rate here is like 4%. And I'm like, Jesus fucking Christ.
That's so fucked up, dude.
So when people say who will solve the murders, just remember that cops are very bad at it.
Yeah.
So
they're not doing anything to help you. They just take our
I'm
money.
Sure there's
they take
places
our fucking taxes
with good clearance rates, but that's like the exception, not the rule.
100%.
Yeah.
Ugh. Wow, that's so fucked.
It's so frustrating. And there's no conclusion. I kept searching, like, I put on the news, thing on Google being like, there's going to be some update. There's going to be some like recent
resolution
Nope.
No, I'm not surprised at all.
Nope.
I'm not
Yeah.
surprised at all.
Nothing's gonna happen, honestly, unless someone goes in there and fires the whole police department, maybe.
And
That
then
could help.
replaces them with what? You know what I mean? Like, it's
I
gonna
don't
have to
know,
be,
yeah.
I don't know, whatever. What are we doing next week? I'm so irritated now. That's
Cindy's mad. What are we doing next week?
What are we doing next week? I'm over this shit. I'm so
Oh,
fucking mad about
okay.
it.
I think I want to do a topic that's kind of silly, but I'm
Okay.
sure end up being gruesome nonetheless. I briefly mentioned it to you this morning, but I want to do cases where murderers posted their murders on Facebook.
Oh man. I would have got away with it if it wasn't for my own stupidity.
My own Facebook post. Yeah, Facebook post murders.
Okay.
Something. Yeah.
I like that. I mean, we've done ones where
we did
they
online
live stream
predators.
it. We've done online predators, which is really good.
But there's something very dorky about the Facebook post murder.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like kind of boomery and like, here, I'm going to do a long rambling post. Like there's something quite specific about that.
No, I like this a lot. It's going to be really good. One of them we did like in the very beginning of and it was the guy who like, I don't know, it was really weird. He kept posting on Facebook and that's like how he got caught.
Yeah, and I think I did him again for Florida murders, I think.
But yes, that guy just keeps coming up because he's just so damn dumb.
Yeah, that really dumb guy. Yeah.
That'll be a good one. Anyway, okay, thanks everybody for tuning in. We love you. We appreciate you. Please like, rate, review, share with your friends, spread the word. Anything else to talk about? I felt like there was something I wanted to say earlier. Oh, I'm reading the Southern Book Club's Guide to Vampire Slaying, by the way. Okay. It's a fun read. It's not fun. It's like kind of gruesome and gnarly, and it's also infuriating because of the way the men behave in the book, which is like way too accurate. But anyway, I'm gonna go finish it because like I got to the point now where I can't put it down. I'm just hoping that I'm not disappointed in the end. But if anybody wants like a fun little vampire-y kind of book to read.
I like the book library corner. I'm reading Tolkien's The Silmarillion very slowly.
Ooh, nice. Well, you're busy right now.
Yeah,
too.
when I have time.
Yeah, I have a little more downtime right now because it's like it's starting to pick up again already at work, but I'm working like kind of normal hours, so I have time to like read and do a couple other things here and there.
Be a human person.
A little bit, yeah, which has been nice. But yeah, anyway, if you guys are interested in good books, there's a couple for you. And until the next list,
stay
off our list. Bye.